G'day and welcome to the Aussie Ideas Man, and this is yet another diversion from my Power Without Fuel episodes. As I had promised I would do occasionally, I am yet again procrastinating making models that might provide free energy, but I have been injured and caught up in debating a few issues on a couple of pro EV sites I watched out of interest. I was about to put out a video explaining my very first big idea, just for some practice, when I tore a tendon in my left leg and I turned to watching videos about EVs for solace. Most of these videos came from England, and I would make few comments on some of them, mostly not, but then there were some from the electric Viking, who is clearly here in Australia, like me, and who specialises in EVs, unlike me, that I found myself being largely disagreeable with enough of what he had said to spur me into action. Heck, I don't have to just comment. I can now make my own videos as well. My interest in making a magnet motor / generator is driven by my general interest in cars and motorbikes, which I have had for well over 50 years. Never an expert, just an enthusiast. My mechanical and scientific knowledge about their workings is almost nil, but I can tell you what car or bike it is more often than most people can if someone points one out to me. Not only that, I can tell you much about the vehicle in relation to how good it is, how well it's sold, and other matters pertaining to what enthusiasts like about them. I'm the armchair expert. Now, over the last week I watched more videos about ice cars and motorbikes, and even lots of other things, but the comments that were particularly off-putting came from these particular videos, and all happened to be about EVs. Hyundai Ioniq 5 price released. It's cheaper than ice. The title alone got me offside. Fuel crisis creates 1600% boost in EV online searches. Lies, damn lies and statistics. And 21 EV mega test, 11 key metrics compared. There aren't even 21 models in Australia. I will put the links in my introductory comments. I am sure the Viking won't mind me promoting his site with 3 videos to check, and you need to see the background for my change of mind. Before I finish writing the spiel on my first big idea I did nothing about, I have decided to do 2 EV related videos. This one is about EVs being generally inferior to ICE cars at present, and my next one will be a comparison between the Ioniq 5 and the F-Pace, maybe even the Alfa Stelvio. I mention Alfa so you don't think I am comparing that road in Europe. With 3 videos now on my to-do list, it may carry me through until I can walk properly again. The comparison video will not pretend to be a test, since I have none of those cars and information available is too scant. My aim is practice at being interesting, and that's about it. Now for my clickbait headline that EVs are worse than ICE cars. It's time to qualify that statement. Once again, I hope to keep this under 20 minutes, as I realise you should have a life. For the really unfamiliar with the history of cars, I will start early, when they became better than the horse and cart. I will note that we still have the horse and cart, but far fewer than cars. Nothing seems to go away completely. Well, when factories started producing cars, electric cars were selling quite well, despite only having big, heavy and weak lead-acid battery technology. But the range advantage of fossil fuel-driven engines soon killed the electric car. EVs had a very brief day in the sun. We are now seeing a renaissance of the EV, mainly due to the lithium-ion batteries, Li-ion for short, and their superior energy density and other properties that make them an almost viable alternative to the internal combustion engine, ICE. I say almost, and that is the crux of my claim. ICE cars are still better cars for many reasons, and I hope people will join in a discussion in the comments to get to the nitty-gritty of it. Cars are both subjective and objective, and both arguments are welcome. The more the merrier. Recognition has to go to Elon Musk and the 2 pioneers he purchased Tesla from in kicking off the renaissance, and it comes down to 2 main factors. First, the swing from using Li-ion batteries only in small products like camcorders and phones to packing them in the thousands to power a car. A simple but brilliant move, and one that established automakers completely missed. The second winning move was to market them smartly, so that they not only got a foot in the car manufacturing door, but showed the old boys how to get significant dominance, and Musk did it to perfection. They were all caught with their pants down, and catching up is still ongoing. Roughly 6,000 mobile phone batteries got an EV almost competitive with ICE cars, but they costed roughly 1,000 times the price of a fuel tank. So buyers with more money than sense were required, and the world seemed to have no shortage of those. It was a car that would cost more and do less in many areas. However, Elon had a master plan, and that came down to simple economic principles, devised long before he was born. It materialised in the Tesla Roadster, the first car to be built and sold by Tesla. Take advantage of that insane torque, incident torque, one of the best features of going electric. So it has to be a little sports car, and sell it to the rich and famous, who can pay for all those exorbitant startup costs. Just make sure it look good, so use the latest body. All sport cars cost a truckload of money, so it won't stand out as poor value in that company. His plan worked, and Tesla got a foothold in the auto industry. The Model S was the perfect segue from boutique cars into working towards the mainstream market. Tesla's next car on the production line. It still needed the rich and famous, but now it was the not so rich and famous, paving the way for the Model 3 to complete the transition to bulk sales to we, the common folk, or the great unwashed. A genuine mass market. The auto industry just stood in awe as they were beaten to the punch by someone who had never made cars. There is a beauty in the marriage of these two simple principles, and how effective they have been, not to mention how shattering they have been to the car industry. How did all those R&D boffins miss the idea that combining little batteries was all that was needed? And to offset the elephant in the room, that of cost outweighing benefits, merely do what just about every early adoption strategy has done. Get those with more money than sense sucked in first. I may be flippant, but even I realise we need those clowns to start up, or there is no heyday later. They are the first steps that need to be taken before we, the great unwashed, can have good things. It's almost ingrained in the circle of life. I tip my hat off to Elon. He has really got the ball rolling. But my point is that we are not quite there yet, and it is in comparing all aspects of comparable EVs and ICE cars where ICE still has the overall advantage. This is why Teslas have to pioneer autonomous driving, free software updates, big screens and other gimmicks to smokescreen us from their inherent disadvantages, which Elon does so well at too. So now I'm about to rank EVs against ICEs in the areas where they are first and foremost cars. Number 1, cost of production. I believe the ICE cars still have the advantage, being much cheaper to make. Number 2, range. ICE is a clear leader. It is why it killed EVs in the first place, and until EV batteries can double their ranges, it will remain so. The problem with doubling is doubling what is already too expensive and far too heavy in the vehicle. It's not as easy as doubling the amount of air vents in the dash or speakers in the cabin. The complexities are staggering. 3, refueling. All ICE cars get 0 to 100% refilling in about 3 minutes. The best EVs get 20 to 80% in 18 minutes, and that is worse than it looks on the surface. The 0 to 100% times of the best is over an hour, and the range is half that of many ICE cars, so taking over 2 hours is a more accurate comparison. Since refueling happens almost weekly, this additional 2 hours is 100 every year, 4 days including nights if you string them together, and that's for the best EVs. Home charging does not offset the problem much at all, because it is only good for those with limited use, and people are accustomed to their cars offering full use all the time. However, in the future, home charging may tip the scales, but I am only considering the present state. I'm not saying EVs won't eventually surpass ICE cars. I'm saying they still have a way to go. I will pause at this point to point out that these 3 features are far more important than any that follow when defining a car's utility value. What it costs, how far it goes, and how easy it is to keep it going are the fundamentals, and other matters are of lesser importance. For example, if an ICE car is $30,000 and goes 800 kilometres and takes 3 minutes to refill, it doesn't matter that your $60,000 EV has 2 more cup holders, a V2L, Google Maps on a 20-inch screen, self-driving tricks and lots of other enticements if it only goes 400 kilometres and takes 2 hours to recharge for that same 800 kilometres, or more like 20 hours if you do it from home. Even more cup holders and silly games on a 22-inch screen and more of the stuff ICE cars can also add just as easily are not going to ever make them better. I will continue the comparison. I'm not near my 20 minutes. Number 4, speed. I find most ICE cars trump EVs for top speeds. They use gearboxes to achieve this and EVs don't. 5, acceleration. EVs usually win on this. Their instant torque is unbeatable. Whenever I want acceleration, I get out of my SLK 350 and jump on my motorbike. Incidentally, I just rode a Harley live wire. Make more electric bikes, I say. 6, cornering. ICE wins because they are much lighter. Those last 3 are important to enthusiasts. So now we move on to what normal people want. Number 7, comfort. No advantage to either, as can be built into both. 8, seating, ditto. 9, load space, ditto. 10, safety. ICE cars have a slight edge, while Li-ion batteries can explode without even having had an accident. 11, reliability. EV makers claim that less moving parts mean more reliability, but the battery that moves least of all is the most unreliable component of an EV. They are shocking and dangerous. Not only do they spit the dummy too soon and cost more than an ICE car to replace, they degrade from new and you lose power and range day by day. Then there's that dendrite issue you start crossing your fingers over when it gets to about 5 years old. Going for a drive is like playing Russian roulette from then on. Buying an EV has this element of buying a ticking time bomb that ICE cars don't have. Your worst ICE car might be putting a piston through the head and coming to a dead stop, but expect that at around 25,000 kilometres or more, if at all. While EV makers promise million-mile batteries and supply 100,000-mile warranties, 1/10 of the hype, the reality is there have been many petrol and diesel engines that have exceeded that distance. Runs on the board for ICE. 12, prestige. Yep, some clowns actually buy cars based primarily on how cool they look, and there are plenty of ICE cars that can deliver on that front. Your Teslas now look like Mondeos and Nissan Leafs, Hyundais and Kias are way back in the pecking order. Getting better with the likes of Porsche, Mercs, Polestar EVs and others jumping in, but still not in the same league as many ICE cars, such as the Bugatti Chiron or even the good old Rolls Royce, if that floats your boat. The Aussie Viking has the gall to say the Hyundai Ioniq 5 is comparable to an Audi e-tron GT and some Mercs and BMWs. But that's putting lipstick on a pig in my book. More on that in my comparison with Jag and Alpha, which I have yet to write a single word on. 13, towing ability. Diesels are streets ahead, it's a no-brainer. 14, practicality. This is one concept that can get really subjective, where one can argue electricity is more practical than fossil fuels, and it probably is. But hand me the keys to a Model 3 long range and a Peugeot 5008 diesel, and I would hand back the Teslas if I had to drive from Brisbane to Adelaide and back. It is really dependent on specific and individual needs. The Tesla would prove too impractical for the journey to even succeed, and I can bring back more cases of my favourite non-alcoholic Petriti in the pub. It's made only in Adelaide and the world doesn't know what it's missing. In the Tesla, I would still have to go through the more populated roads a long way around and stop a few nights to fit in the charging schedule, whereas in the Pug I can drive 24 hours straight through Broken Hill with no planning where my fuel is located along the way. You know what they say, time is money, and they didn't factor in motel costs. I once took a Tarago that way in 25 hours, but we spent an hour sightseeing Broken Hill. So I am certain of my estimate and the need to not plan fuel stops. We bought our food in the short time it took to refuel, and 8 on the move, really practical. And with almost no steering on the traffic-free roads, even the driver had no problem eating his meat pie. Not appealing for the high rollers, I'm sure, but pies were a treat compared to Vegemite sandwiches when at home. The kids were chuffed. This is a 1,600 kilometre trip, or 1,000 miles in the old measure, or roughly like driving from Paris to Naples or LA to Vancouver, but they would be more practical for an EV than the Brisbane to Adelaide run. Location is relevant to individual needs. 15. Eco-friendly. EV makers claim they are saving the planet by cutting greenhouse gases and slowing global warming, but research shows they fudge the stats by just comparing fuel use and not the bigger picture. The manufacturer of batteries tips the scales towards ICE cars because they do more damage to the planet than EV makers care to mention. Not all things are what you first think, nor what advertisers tell you. I will leave you to research the boring scientific articles that delve into the whole picture, inclusive of manufacture of every component to extraction and distribution of power sources. It's complex. The only really green way to get to work is by walking, when it comes down to it. Being properly eco-friendly is the pits. That's enough of a comparison for me. I'm beginning to bore myself by now. With 3 critical aspects for all, 3 more for the enthusiasts, and 9 more for Johnny Ordinary to select only those that appeal to him in varying degrees, I have pretty much covered the key factors. In summary, the wild claims that ICE cars are so inferior they will be dead by 2030 are nonsense. At present they remain superior, and technology has a long way to go before it overcomes those factors I have mentioned that are the most meaningful. They will concentrate on the gimmicks and try to fool us into thinking EVs are desirable with as many as they can add. They will also con governments into thinking EV is good, ICE is bad, and on that note they have an easy job. Who can't hoodwink the governments? It would be